Howdy ho ho, my good humans. How the hell are you doing? This is Unnecessary Rambling. I'm Brandon Sylvia. I appreciate y'all for stopping by, for tuning in. Today, we are going to be taking a look at your hot takes, and I'll be responding, reacting to your hot takes, your video game hot takes here today. I posted my own hot takes. I'll have a link to that in the description, so if you want to go check that out. I was thinking about doing like half my hot takes for this video, half y'all's hot takes, but y'all submitted a ton of good shit that I want to talk about here today. So it's just going to be solely focused on y'all's hot takes, and then I'll make a part two for my own unpopular opinions, hot takes at a later date. All right, so let's kick it off with Dante Ricks here. And he says, and we'll take this bit by bit for people who have multiple hot takes. We'll kind of go at them bit by bit. The first one here is most side quests just suck. Very few match the quality seen in Rockstar's games like Red Dead Redemption 2. And I generally overall agree with this. I do think Rockstar also at times can get into some sort of bland side quests. I don't think they rely on side quests as much as a lot of other open world games. So I do think they benefit there. And also, they usually have pretty strong payoffs for even some of the more boring shit, like going and picking flowers. That's about as boring of an activity as you could possibly find in an open world game. But then it leads to, like in Red Dead Redemption 1, when you're literally going and picking flowers, it leads to one of the darkest payoffs that I've ever really seen in a side quest. So yeah, I agree pretty much across the board with this. Other than, yeah, sometimes Rockstar does have some kind of bland side questing going on as well. And his second take here is that the worst thing in modern gaming is the notion that bigger is better, which leads to bloated games and badly paced games. And yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I don't know if that's the worst thing about modern gaming. I think there's quite a few awful things about modern gaming, but that's definitely at the top of the list, man. There's way too much bloat, way too much boring ass shit. Even tying to the last point there about most side quests just sucking. I think a lot of those could be cut out if it wasn't for the notion that bigger is better with these never-ending games and never-ending game worlds that you can just kind of lose yourself inside of. We need more fucking Evil Wests and roller drones and games that are creating unique concepts and unique mechanics and doing cool shit, but maybe in a more confined, smaller space. It doesn't have to be 70 hours to finish it. I'm cool with a good 5 to 10 hour game if you're creating something that's very, very unique, a fun new experience. The next take here is that Elden Ring is overrated as hell. And I definitely wouldn't say that Elden Ring is overrated. I can't speak much to it at all. I just, that's just not a genre that I'm interested in. So that's kind of my thing is I wouldn't want to call it overrated, or I don't know if it's properly rated, underrated, I don't know, because I just don't care for the genre. So I typically try to avoid all of the Souls games because I don't like how that combat feels. So this next one I think is really interesting. He says if Lies of P was made by FromSoft, it would have been an 88 or something. Meaning like, it would have been rated in that same camp how most of the other Souls games and stuff are rated. It would have been much more highly regarded if it was FromSoft who developed it instead of I don't remember the damn name of the developer from Lies of P, but I find this interesting because I had the exact same experience with Dungeons of Hinterberg this year, and I literally thought this exact same thing. I was like, dude, if Dungeons of Hinterberg, if that wasn't the name and it was like some Zelda spinoff and it was made by Nintendo, but nothing about the game was changed at all, if it was the exact same game, but it was made by Nintendo, people would be talking about Dungeons of Hinterberg as like a game of the year, contender. But since the name Nintendo or Zelda isn't attached to it at all, it's like, gone with the wind. Nobody's talking about the game whatsoever. And it's legitimately one of the best games of the year. Probably my favorite game of the year currently. And once again, I can't really speak to Lies of P because anytime I see Souls, anything, my eyes just glaze over. I have no interest in playing any of them. But I do think the notion is very, very compelling that there are games out there that, or there are developers out there, publishers out there who just get preferential treatment. And I mean, that's obvious, but like it is so interesting to think about a parallel universe where it's FromSoft's Lies of P, Nintendo's Dungeons of Hinterberg. Like what how different does the fate of those games look in that weird reality? And as much as I love Rockstar, I think about that with Sleeping Dogs a good bit as well, where I'm like, damn man, if it was just made by Rockstar, we would be on Sleeping Dogs 4 by now. You know what I mean? I think Sleeping Dogs is at like a 79 or some crazy shit on Metacritic, and then all the GTA games are 90 or higher. It's like, dude, there's no way that this is fucking 15, 10, 15 points better than Sleeping Dogs. No GTA game is 10, 15 points better than Sleeping Dogs, in my opinion. So these next two I'm going to kind of bunch together because we kind of addressed it a little bit earlier with one of the takes, but he says most open world games are boring and bland, and we have way too few short, linear games like we did on the PS3 and 360. And it is really wild to think about just how many badass games we got in the sixth and seventh gen era that just, were straight to the point, didn't waste your time. Your Gears of Wars, your Max Paynes, fucking God of War, Dead Space, DMC, Bayonetta, fucking Bioshock. Like there were so many of these titles, and even the more open, like the Beyond Good and Evils did not waste your time at all. And it's not open world, but it's somewhat open world-ish. And you're in and out of there in 15 hours. Mass Effect, you could play through Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 in under 70 hours if you just wanted to mainline it. Even less than that. I mean, all of those games you could finish in like 15-ish hours. It it really is crazy that we somehow abandoned that in the AAA space, the nice tight, linear 8 to 15 hour action adventure games. Like you just do not see those much at all. And it feels like those style of games of that ilk, games of that runtime are much easier to make consistently and get out more regularly. And they're also much easier, seemingly. It seems like it should be much easier to make a great one of those opposed to a great 100-hour game. You know what I mean? Like, how in the hell can you fill 100 hours full of compelling content versus like, yeah, you can fill 8 hours where every single hour is fun and enjoyable and even maybe more replayable than some of your bigger open world titles. And yeah, I don't know. I do agree though. We need more of that Evil West and games of the Dead Space and BioShock ilk to come back for sure. Appreciate you for writing in, Dante. And now we are moving to Baseball Stars 855. And they say, I think more games should adopt a less is more mentality when it comes to dialogue and story. Too much repetitive blabbing and uninteresting dialogue. I feel like developers constantly make characters talk to subsidize boring gameplay. Oh, this is spicy. This is interesting. I feel like I might disagree with this, but it, it's one of those weird things where I don't know if I disagree holistically. Like, I don't know if I disagree with the entirety of this take because it's like, I do look at certain games. Like, I've been playing Yakuza and I've played through the Judgment games, and I kind of do think that they're maybe a little too verbose. Like, I think that they maybe do repeat a lot of shit in their dialogue that will take 30, 45 minutes when it's like, okay, that we could have got to the same point in probably 7, 8 minutes. You probably could have cut 20 minutes of fat in that dialogue exchange. But then on the other hand, I think of some of my favorite games of all time, like the Metal Gear Solid series. I think everybody would kind of collectively agree that those games are maybe a bit too wordy, maybe a bit too verbose, maybe a bit overwritten. Um, but they're some of my favorite games ever. Even Guardians of the Galaxy from Crystal Dynamics or Eidos Montreal from the Deus Ex team. They came out in 2020, 2021. That was one of my favorite action adventure games of recent memory, and it is non-stop dialogue. And I also think that it fits your argument, and I would agree that it probably is overwritten or there is too much dialogue, too much conversation that tries to distract you from the fact that the gameplay's not that great in that Guardians of the Galaxy game. So that's an interesting take. I feel like I kind of agree, kind of disagree, where it's not going to make me dislike if the story itself is just so great, like the Metal Gear Solid series or like Guardians of the Galaxy, even though it maybe is a bit too wordy, I still can find it really compelling. All right, next up here we have, I apologize in advance. I'm about to butcher the shit out of this. Kyrian Sinjiskwi 2178 says, my gaming hot take: if a person has never played a particular game, their opinion on the game's quality is completely invalid, and what they say should be disregarded. The only exception I take are for games that are actually broken. And my friend, I could not agree more. They also commented, this is in regards to a take I had about modern gaming fans kind of fucking sucking, a lot of them. And they said, in regards to number three, I agree with this part. I agree that this partly applies to the kind of people who relentlessly shit on Ubisoft games just because it's popular. In any Ubisoft video, one of the top comments are always, all Ubisoft games are shit. All Ubisoft games are the same shit, clearly showing they've never played it or even considered giving it a chance. And this, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that was said in this opinion. It's so crazy to me that people who have zero knowledge of games, people who have zero knowledge or zero interest of even trying to gain any knowledge of games, have zero interest in ever playing the games, will still talk shit endlessly about the games. It's a very weird, like anytime I don't want to play something or I have zero interest in it, you don't really ever hear me shitting on it. Like I don't like Souls games at all, but I'm never really going to, in the case of Elden Ring, like I'm not going to say Elden Ring's overrated or a bad game, or I don't have interest in it. I don't want to see the game fail, or I don't want to, rain on anyone else's parade. It's just not for me. And it is so crazy. People who've never played the game get an opinion, and their opinion gets to be considered just as valid as someone who did play the game. It's like, it's a weird phenomenon. And then to the case of Ubisoft, of people saying Ubisoft, all Ubisoft games are the same thing. It's like, dude, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown came out this year. They released Assassin's Creed Mirage last year. That they also make Far Cry. They also make The Division. They also make the Rainbow Six games. They make Mario and Rabbids. They made For Honor. Like, you got to be more clear. You can dislike certain franchises. You can even I think the more valid thing would be to dislike certain developers under the Ubisoft umbrella. You see this with Call of Duty all the time, where Call of Duty fans will be like, yeah, we like the Treyarch games, or we like the Raven games, or we like the games that are made by this team or that team, but we really don't like the other who makes this style of Call of Duty experience. We kind of avoid those ones. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Why is the Call of Duty fan base more knowledgeable about the developers and who creates their games versus the Ubisoft fans? You would actually kind of think it would be the opposite end. But for whatever reason, that is not the case. And yeah, I find it very bizarre. So I agree with that unpopular opinion hot take 1000%. And next up, we have Lord O's the King, and they say, my hot take would be that the Souls-like and roguelike genre is the most overhyped and oversaturated genre in this modern era. It shoehorned in games that didn't need it and probably ruined sales. I would have bought Elden Ring and games like Lies of P day one if it was just a typical action RPG. I'm definitely in the same camp of, I just don't like the pace. I don't like how slow and methodical the Souls games are. I don't like rolling around on the ground and all that shit. So I tend to agree, but I do wonder about the ruined sales. I so it's one or two things. It's definitely going to put certain people off from buying these Souls like roguelike games, but is it going to attract more people than it's putting off. That's the thing I'm so curious about. And I wish we had some sort of way to identify that, even if it was just some sort of anecdotal, okay, we surveyed 500 or 1,000 people and these are their buying habits. Like, I don't know. I would like to see a study on that. Like if Elden Ring or if X game is a Souls like, are you more or less likely to buy? I don't know. I think that I would like to see some sort of study on that. Um, but Elden Ring, I think, has sold over like 20 million copies at this point. I remember seeing something that was, I believe it said Elden Ring had already sold more in its time of release, so 2022 to 2024, than Spider-Man on the PS4 sold from 2018 to 2024. Talking original Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man. And I know that's on one platform, yada yada yada, but it's also on PC now as well. So Elden Ring kind of changed my perception of what the sales expectations or the viability of that genre. And it's the thing too with the Souls games is you can recreate that formula. And I'm not saying you can recreate the Fromsoft formula because obviously that hasn't gone over too well for most developers who have attempted. Um, but then you do have your stuff like Lies of P that seems to be in that same company of quality. But it's much easier to just create a Souls like structure than it is to create a GTA like, open world crime game. You're not really gonna get indie developers even trying that. Um, and with Souls like games, they're flooding the market. So to your point about it being so oversaturated, I think that's the reason. Is because it's not necessarily like a hard genre to create something inside of. It seems to be a hard genre to create something really, really good inside of. I think that also does lead to fatigue of any genre. And even, going back to the GTA likes in that era, the PS2 era, you saw a bunch of AAA publishers trying to create something similar, like your True Crimes and your Mafias and your Narcs and your Godfathers and your Scarfaces. And but once again, those are all AAA companies who are putting tons of money behind these games. And so the oversaturation, even within that genre, never got even anywhere near the point where it's at with the Souls genre now, where anybody and their mom can create a new Souls like and put it out there on the market, and some hit, some don't. But we get so many of them. All right, and next up we go to Panda Grog 8957, and we'll hit these one by one as well. Here's mine. Game comparison is a cancer in the community. It sets unrealistic expectations. For example, people consistently compared Cyberpunk to GTA because there were open world games in cities. That leads people to believe that there should be GTA-like mechanics in the game, and that because it's not exactly like GTA, it's bad. Um, yeah, I mean, in that aspect, I would agree that any comparison where it's like, okay, you have to be exactly like this other game just because you have similarities, that's an awful thing to set that expectation on a developer because it doesn't allow them to innovate. It doesn't allow them to create new things within the genre. That's how genres or subgenres evolve is, oh shit, GTA 3. Okay, well, what if we did GTA 3, but like with the Mercenaries games, now it's more destructible. It's more kind of militaristic in a sense. So yeah, genres and subgenres should always evolve. But I do think that comparison of quality sometimes can e- educate or like if I am going into something expecting a Grand Theft Auto style experience because of some marketing, then I'm not saying to Cyberpunk's case because it wasn't marketed that way, but like it is nice to know, okay, hey, this new Saints Row game doesn't live up to the previous Saints Row games. So comparing it to something earlier in the franchise, or even I do think comparison can educate the consumer behavior in a way where it's like nice to know that, all right, yeah, well, it's not going to be S tier quality like some of these other games, but it's a good A or B tier or C tier game. Like I like to know that before going into a game, especially if it is something that I'm unfamiliar with. And I think comparison, like in terms of mechanics or in terms of description, to once again inform the audience of saying like, okay, hey, well, Cyberpunk is an open world city, kind of crime game like a Grand Theft Auto, but instead of third person, it's first person. And it leans a little bit more mechanically. It's closer to something like a Deus Ex. So I think comparing or drawing some sort of comparison there to allow people some expectation for what they're getting themselves into, I think a game can benefit there. So I agree in a sense that no game should have to do exactly what the pinnacle of the genre does, or no game should have to adhere to some very strict rule set to be in that genre or whatever the case may be. But I do think that comparison can be valuable in some areas. All right. And now we'll move on to the second hot take, and that is that Ghost of Tsushima is the most overrated game they've ever played. They say it's basically a very good looking Ubisoft game with very dull characters and a boring, bland plot line. The same people who shat on Ubisoft said absolutely nothing about Ghost of Tsushima's bland open world design. Like the game is a 8 or 7 out of 10. No way is it a 9 or 10 out of 10 or the best game of 2020 like people said it was. I love this one because I totally disagree with almost everything said here, but that's what makes it a hot take. That's why it is a hot take. Um I do agree with I think that Assassin's Creed just gets shit on too much. I think that's really what all of this comes down to in this hot take is that Ghost of Tsushima might seem overpraised by the same people who devalue Assassin's Creed and the Ubisoft formula, even though they make a million different fucking styles of games. Um, but yeah, it's like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I like more than Ghost of Tsushima, I think. You know what I mean? I think that both games are great. I would rank both of them like a 9 out of 10. Ghost of Tsushima was my favorite game of 2020. But in the same sense, I also do agree that it is very akin to Assassin's Creed. It feels a lot like Assassin's Creed across the board. But to me, that's a good thing. That's not a negative at all. It's like, you know, for decades, the Assassin's Creed fan base was clamoring for an Assassin's Creed game set in feudal Japan, and it just took them fucking 20 years to get there. And Ghost of Tsushima did it first. And maybe in some ways, in terms of cinematic presentation and storytelling and character models and all that shit, I think Ghost of Tsushima is definitely they have a leg up on Assassin's Creed, but it's undeniable that Ghost of Tsushima borrowed a ton from the Ubisoft Assassin's Creed formula, without a doubt. Their next hot take is that 10 out of 10 should never be given out to any game unless you have played it multiple times. I don't want to see this bullshit 10 out of 10 if you rushed to play the game before embargo came out. Baldur's Gate 3 is an example of a game that has big issues in the end half of the game, but its start is so damn good that reviews overlooked the rush part of the game because ironically, they were rushing. Yeah, this is so in the case of something like Baldur's Gate 3, I find that fucking fascinating because Loon told me, the homie who I do the show with quite regularly, told me that months and months after the game came out, Act 3 for Baldur's Gate 3 was still kind of busted. And it's like, dude, y'all are giving out 10 out of 10s to a game you didn't roll credits on? On the 10 out of 10 should never be given out to any game unless you have played it multiple times. I don't agree with that part, but I I think that we might agree that just the way that the structure of reviews, how they're set up currently is a bit insane, that an outlet will get review codes 10 days before a game is released and they're told they have to decide if that game's a 10 out of 10 or not. in those 10 days, whenever they're playing a 70 hour, like that's fucking insane. So I think that I get where you're coming from. I think the cutoff should be, I think you can develop an understanding of what range you would score a game in after you roll credits. I think without a doubt, every single game, if it is a game that you can begin and finish and roll credits and see something through to, at least the main quest. If you can see the main quest through, sure, mark your review score on a game. But if you are playing through a fucking Baldur's Gate 3 and you don't get to Act 3 to find out it's busted and you still give it a 10 out of 10, that is wild to me. That is so, so beyond wild to me. I can't believe that that happened. And the next one here is that the Fallout TV show doesn't deserve the placement as one of the great video game media with Arcane, Edge Runners, and The Last of Us. I think people overrated it because it's either their first time experiencing Fallout or because they had low expectations for the show. The show doesn't really do anything original with the IP despite being an original storyline, unlike Edge Runners or Arcane did. Even the Tilu, which is basically almost a exact ripoff from the game, it had a new storyline with Bill. Like the entire plot line is basically Fallout 3 and 4's with the viewer starting in a vault and then having to find their family member. The setting is also set in California, but made more boring because they just got rid of everything that made it interesting in Fallout 1 and 2 and New Vegas. It's fun, and that's really all it is. So I really fucking enjoyed um the Fallout TV show. I don't think it's I don't think it's as good as The Last of Us. So that's the weird thing. I would rather watch the Fallout TV show than The Last of Us, but I also I can only take so much doom and gloom and dour depressing shit. So for me, I feel like the Fallout TV show is more bingeable, more rewatchable. I really enjoyed the tone, the humor, it was really well written to me, but also I'm not a Fallout guy. Like I played Fallout 3, played a little bit of Fallout 4. I don't have real I finished New Vegas. I don't really have a ton of interest though in like the world of Fallout, the lore of Fallout. I think the games are mostly pretty good. But it's not like a series I'm so invested in. So I don't really know how they compare to like 1 and 2 and stuff like that. I just thought it was fun, silly, definitely not nowhere anywhere close to the level of quality as The Last of Us. But I think it's the thing too where even though I know it's not as good as The Last of Us, I think I might personally like it more than The Last of Us. So yeah, I haven't watched Edge Runners or Arcane yet, so I can't really comment on those. All right, and then the next hot take here was that they say I miss handheld consoles. I have some of my best experiences playing the DS and PSP. New mobile game systems like the Steam Deck and Switch don't feel the same way at all. I think most people would, well, I think the hot take here is actually that the Steam Deck and Switch don't scratch that same itch from the handheld console market. And actually, we'll tie this next one in together. I know people hated the era of motion controls, but I kind of miss it. I thought it was cool and never stopped thinking it was cool. I miss my Wii, damn it. That's definitely um a hot take. Oh man, I fucking hate that shit. I hate motion controls. I hate all of that. Even handhelds, if I'm being totally honest, I fucking hate handhelds too. I can't stand it. I like just core console gaming, set the fucking thing up, play it on a TV, chill, and then that's the only yeah. I'm very I don't know about setting my way. I will say I watched a video Kyle Bossman did. He runs the delayed input channel, or it might just be under the name Kyle Bossman. But regardless, I watched a video where he bought the PSVR 2 because it went on like a crazy sale, and he picked it up and picked up a few games for it. And I was like, dude, that looks fun as shit. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, should I buy one of these fucking things? It was the first time I actually like really contemplated picking one of them up, at least since I saw the actual gameplay of that Horizon VR game, and I was like, it doesn't look all that fun. But at first I was like, oh shit, Horizon VR, that's a sick ass idea, but it seems like it wasn't all that incredible. Um, but yeah, I was watching that video and I was like, damn, should I buy one of these fucking things and just test it out? I still think at like the whatever 300, $250 price point, it's a no-go for me, but I don't know if there's like if one really great PSVR 2 game ever comes out, like really, really great where you can only play it on PSVR 2, I think I might pick one of those up because I'm pretty fucking curious about the PSVR 2, but just you got to give me something a little that has nothing to do with motion controls or handhelds, but weird kind of gimmick markets, whatever the hell you want to call it. All right, and next hot take, unpopular opinion comes in from the homie Loon, and they say Persona 5 isn't very good, and I'd consider it to be third place of the ones that are available on modern platforms. And I'll have to take your word for it. I've never played really much of the Persona games at all. No interest in really ever playing them, but I do really I have a lot of interest in Metaphor. The Metaphor ReFantasio. I know that's coming out this year. I When is that coming out? Okay, I just pulled it up. It is coming out October 11th. What else is coming out in October? Okay, yeah. Silent Hill 2 is coming out on October 8th. Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero October 10th. Metaphor October 11th. Call of Duty October 25th. Life is Strange October 20th. Damn. Shadows of the Damned October 31st. October is fucking loaded. And then November, Slitterhead November 8th. Assassin's Creed Shadows November 15th. Stalker 2 November 20th. The end of the year is really starting to shape up. Metaphor, I mean, if Metaphor gets crazy, crazy, crazy reviews, which I think it's going to, like, I think that's going to be a game of the year contender. I might have to make some room in October to slot it in. I don't know. We'll see. But I am interested. I'm much more interested in Metaphor than I've ever been in any Persona game. All right. And then the next hot take comes from Salty AF 38. They say DMC, Devil May Cry from Ninja Theory is the best DMC game. And I just recently picked this up. I booted it up, played it for maybe 3 hours or so, and I fucking love it. It is really fun. It's really quirky, super silly, maybe not quite as layered as the Capcom games in terms of the complexity of the combat mechanics, but I think it makes up for that with its style and with its narrative. And yeah, I've really been enjoying it. I got to finish that. All right, and now we go to the Dynasty Warrior 13, and they say, all right, some hot takes I have. Call of Duty World at War was the best COD game. I got to take your word as the gospel on that. I have no idea. Soulsborne slash From Software games are too frustrating and difficult and should include difficulty settings. So I so here's the thing. I honestly don't think it has as much to do with difficulty as you might think it does. I think if you were to play, and maybe you can correct me, Dynasty Warrior, what is it? Dynasty Warrior 13. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this, and for real, do. If you've played Rise of the Ronin, it has a difficulty setting. I'd be really curious to hear your take on if that game or if any other Souls game with a difficulty setting, if you bumped it down to easy and if you were able to enjoy it. Because I thought the same thing. And then I played Rise of the Ronin and I bumped it down to easy. And I was like, I still fucking hate this. And I think a lot of people out there underestimate the fact that you might just not like the combat system. Like I Rise of the Ronin, I blitzed through it, no problem, barely ever died once I dropped it down to easy. There was zero difficulty there at all. I just thought I don't like the combat. I don't like the speed of that combat. And I think a lot of people, myself included, we just miss like the old school action game feel, the old school God of War, DMC, Bayonetta, like the pace and quickness and even your Castlevania games on the 360 back in the day. And then you had so many God of War and DMC and Bayonetta clones out there. Um, we just don't get games of that speed in the action. Even your stuff like Stellar Blade, it's much more slowed down. That kind of blends in between somewhere in that DMC character action camp and also somewhere in the Souls camp. And it's like all action games, Black Myth Wukong, somewhere in that middle ground. And it's fine. Um, but yeah, I just miss the pace of those old God of War clones and DMC clones and games of that ilk. Their next hot take is that Grand Theft Auto is only fun in 15-minute increments and then gets boring fast after you stop racking up 5 stars and getting chased by the cops. Uh, I hear often that GTA games are repetitive. Like that's a common criticism. And people say the gameplay is the same thing over and over. And I'm just really confused by that critique. Like, okay, if you do believe that, I need to know which games aren't repetitive to you. Because like Final Fantasy VII, Rebirth is cutscene, combat, cutscene, combat with some mini games sprinkled in. Yakuza is run around an open world, have some enemies swarm you, you mash a couple buttons, cutscene, mini game, repeat. And it's like Grand Theft Auto. I it's kind of the same thing, but you have driving in there. You can fly helicopters and planes and drive boats and get in shootouts and get in melee fist fights and do heist missions. You got a decent enough story for the majority of the Grand Theft Auto games. You have mini games like you do in the other games that we just mentioned. I would say, kind of, I would argue it's maybe one of the least repetitive games in terms of the variety that's on offer. I can understand it's probably repetitive if you're just going around and trying to rack up the 5 stars and getting in shootouts and not doing the story and not doing the mini games and not, engaging with all the different content. But I think that I I think just most games are repetitive in general. And I think that people just sort of find the repetition that they prefer. Like, because that's the thing. When people say that Grand Theft Auto games are repetitive, and I don't even think you brought that up uh in your criticism here of Grand Theft Auto. No, you didn't mention it was repetitive. This is more directed at I've heard it a lot that GTA games are repetitive. I would really want to hear which games aren't repetitive. You know what I mean? Because I just think they all are. And then we just find the thing we like to repeat the most, and those are the games we kind of flock to. And then their last take, it says, I like the new Assassin's Creed, the RPG Assassin's Creed games more than the old school stealth ones. And yeah, I'm totally in alignment with this. I talked earlier, but I love Odyssey. Odyssey is one of my favorite games of what was that, 2020 or 2019? I was gonna say one of my favorite games of the decade, the 2020s, but I think it was 2019 when that came out. Or no, that was 2018. Yeah, that came out the same year as Red Dead 2, God of War, fucking Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World. Like that was a what a fucking year for big open world action adventure style games. Um yeah, but Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is one of my favorite games of recent memory. I love that game, and I'm so excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows because it's the same team that made Odyssey, and I just adored Odyssey. I dabbled with some of the earlier Assassin's Creed games recently. Like I went and I bought a bunch of them, just sort of messed around for a couple hours, and none of them really got their hooks in me. So I would say I'm definitely in the same camp of I really Odyssey was the first Assassin's Creed game I ever played because of the RPG mechanics. I remember seeing it at E3 and they showed off that you could like make decisions and shit. And I'm coming off of Mass Effect and BioWare games. I'm like, hell yeah. I'm so down to play an Assassin's Creed game that kind of leans into the BioWare aspects of it. And I don't think they're doing that much in Shadows, which bums me out. But yeah, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I fucking love it so much. All right, and then our next take comes from Axtic God. Here's my hot take that shouldn't be a hot take. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a garbage game, and Rockstar is an outdated company feeding off nostalgia and Rockstar sexuals who would praise a wet fart if it came from Rockstar. Um, I talked about this a little bit earlier. I do think it is kind of crazy that all Rockstar games or all like Grand Theft Auto games are, I think, like 95 or higher if I'm not mistaken. If you look at their Metacritic rating, they're all somewhere in that like 95 or higher range. That is wild. And like we talked about earlier with Nintendo and Fromsoft, and there's other companies you can throw in there, Atlas, and there's other companies who maybe they get a little bit of a bump, and I would definitely throw Rockstar in there. They're one of my favorite developers in the world. I gotta say this. What is with the bronze sexual? In like I'm a big NBA fan, and I hear all the time people calling other people bronze sexuals or rock star sexuals. What is that? Such a bizarre insult. But yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a garbage game and Rockstar is an outdated company. Uh, Red Dead Redemption 2, I think, is the greatest game I've ever played in my life. Once again, not my favorite game that I've ever played in my life, but I think in terms of quality, it's the greatest game I've ever played in my life. So we definitely disagree there. Outdated company feeding off nostalgia. I'm not really sure about that. I don't think that's the case. I just don't think they make enough games to really like a certain part of me agrees that they're feeding off nostalgia because it's like they don't make many modern games. They've put out one game in the last what 11 years, something like that. So it's like yeah, a certain part of their critical acclaim and the beloved nature, how much the fan base loves Rockstar, a lot of that does definitely come down to nostalgia because they don't really have much modern for people to look at and analyze. So we'll kind of see how it holds up when GTA 6 comes out. But yeah, I mean, definitely a hot take. All right, and I think we're down to our final few takes of the video here, and they come to us from Mr. Mondane Designs, the homie. Let's see, hot takes. The Wii does not have light gun games. That is an air mouse pointer. I'll run through a couple of these together. Smash Bros is a terrible franchise. Pokemon is not fun. So these I don't really have a ton to I'm not a Pokemon guy. I've never played Pokemon games. Smash, the only one I've played is the 2018 one, and my buddies had it, and I would just kind of run through a few games with them. It's not something I ever played in any like all together. I've maybe played 10 hours of it. The Wii does not have light gun games. I've actually never owned a Wii, so I can't comment on that. But this next one we can definitely dive into. The Xbox Series X does not have enough exclusives to make me buy one. I feel like this is inarguable. You know what I mean? I think that's a real issue that Xbox is running into where it's like, if you own a PC, there's no reason to ever buy an Xbox. And I guess that's a part of their business model where they're like, hey, we'll just get games to wherever players are. And I think that now, when you're seeing Hi-Fi Rush come over and you're seeing Pentiment and Grounded, and I'm sure Indiana Jones will come over, and I'm sure a lot of other games are going to end up migrating to PS5. It's like even less of a reason to buy an Xbox Series X. And when Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, it's probably going to launch day and date on PlayStation. So it's they're in a really tough spot, and it seems like the rug was pulled out from up under them right at the worst time. When Avowed is about to launch, Indiana Jones is about to launch, Starfield just launched. They have fucking Fable that's coming out next year. Perfect Dark looks really good. South of Midnight's coming together. Clockwork Revolution is coming together. Gears of War, the new Gears of War was just announced, and like so it seems that the floodgates are opening. Hellblade 2 just came out, which, people have mixed thoughts on, but the floodgates of content are opening up in a big way, but you can play them on PC. You're going to be able to play a lot of these experiences on PS5 at some point. And there's no clear messaging of like when can we expect these games to come to PS5? Because in the case of something like Hi-Fi Rush, that wasn't a long wait at all. You know what I mean? That was what, a year or so. So it's like, is that the kind of the case? It seems that there's no real consistency with that. So yeah, it's going to be a problem trying to sell this system whenever people kind of now have the expectation that a lot of those games are going to come to the system that they already own. Or if someone's looking to buy into the next generation or current generation of consoles, they go, okay, well, I can only play God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West and Spider-Man 2 and Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 16 and Stellar Blade and Helldivers 2. Well, you can play that on PC, but I can only play these games on console here. So I'll go with that. And then you're telling me I'm probably also going to get Indiana Jones and Blade and some of these other titles as well. It's yeah, it's a hard sell. And his next take was once consoles go all digital, I will just stick to my computer and Steam. And yeah, that makes total sense to me. I could not argue that one at all. I still think I'll probably be a console guy just because I hate computers so much. Um, or I might just go Steam Deck and try to figure out that shit. But yeah, I don't even know what I'm gonna do when that day comes. Like a part of me just goes, I'll just go back and collect because there's so many consoles that I don't have much experience with. Like I just said, the Wii or the GameCube. I've thought a lot about wanting to revisit the all-time great Nintendo games, like Ocarina of Time and these games that I have no knowledge of because I've just never been a Nintendo guy. I've really thought about just going back and trying to rediscover or discover for the first time what some people consider some of the greatest games of all time. And maybe that would be the time to do it. Once consoles go all digital, just be like, yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna go on this totally new journey through the Nintendo fucking historical greatness. So yeah, I think once consoles go all digital, I might just be done. I really, I probably won't be. I probably won't be, but I'll never buy games on day one. I'll be everything 10, 15 bucks, 20 bucks max. And that'll just be for fucking indie games. Never will support AAA $70 digital bullshit ever. Online play services are too expensive and offer too little value. Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus online play services. So, do you mean like to be able to access the ability to play online? I would definitely agree with that. But if you're talking about like Game Pass or something, I I, I think Game Pass for me is personally worth the value. But I've played so many damn games on Game Pass this year. The Yakuza games that I've played through all on Game Pass. I'm playing through Skyrim right now. I played through Oblivion, Game Pass, both of those. Played through Wolfenstein 1 and 2, both on Game Pass. Gears 3, 4, and 5, all this year, all were from Game Pass. So I've used the shit out of Game Pass. So I definitely get my value out of Game Pass. But if you're talking about just for the online play, it's fucking crazy. It's criminal that people have to pay for that at all. Let's see. Number seven, analog sticks are too archaic. All controllers should use Hall effect sticks for the prices they charge. Yeah, it is crazy how much modern controllers cost compared to back in the day. Controllers are so goddamn expensive nowadays. I'm not a big controller guy one way or the other. I'll use a cheap controller happily all day long, but it's even for the base fucking controller, you're talking about 70 bucks. That's bad shit crazy. Eighth hot take here, digital purchases are worthless beyond the entertainment value. I yeah, I could not agree more. That you don't own anything. It's nothing. It's in the oblivion. It's in the ether. It's not a real item that you're buying at all. The video game market is close to crashing due to overcrowding. This is uh, huh. Video game market is close to crashing due to I think I agree with that. I think I agree with that across the board. I mean, like I don't think we're ever going to get to the fucking pre-NES crash of 83 or whatever. Like I don't think we'll ever see that in gaming again. I So it's weird because in 2025 we know that the Switch 2 is going to come out. That's going to be a huge shot in the arm to the industry. GTA 5 is going to be an even bigger shot in the arm to the industry. It's yeah, if if we were in a situation right now where those two things were not imminent, like, okay, let's look at the situation we're in currently where you're seeing closures and collapses and video games not selling this and then consoles aren't, you're seeing like the decline. The PS5 dropped off a cliff, like 30, I think it's like 30 something percent decline year over year in sales. Xbox Series X, like a 40 something percent decline year over year in sales. Like the industry does definitely look like it's collapsing. And to be in a spot in 2024, if we weren't looking at GTA 6 and the Switch 2 releasing in the next year, I do think yeah, that would be a spooky spot to be in. I really do believe so. And once again, I'm not talking a total, collapse, but you are seeing somewhat of a collapse right now. Entire big studios being shuttered and shit that you would not expect to happen a couple years ago. And a lot of it is due to COVID and just the how the market ballooned during COVID. And for whatever fucking reason, these publishers thought that was going to be sustainable and that they could keep on, reaping the benefits of a world where everybody's locked inside. Like, what motherfucker, one day people are going to get back to their normal lives. Why are you banking on that? And I think you're seeing a lot of overcorrection because of that. But yeah, dude, if GTA 6 and the Switch 2 weren't on the horizon, we might be experiencing a pretty gruesome collapse. And then for our 10th and final hot take of the video, Mr. Mondane says that retro games are not an investment. Collecting retro games is not an investment. I totally agree with that. It's bizarre to me that people buy games as like an actual investment. That is, you talk about unpredictable markets. That is a very fucking unpredictable market. I would not advise anybody to be buying games as an investment. Buy the shit you want to play. Have fun with. I mean, do whatever the fuck you want to do. I don't give a fuck what people out there do. But come on, man. Like if you're banking on that for your retirement, hey, I guess there have been cases of people selling sealed fucking copies of whatever game for millions of dollars. But I would keep investing in your Roth IRA and your 401k. I think you'll be better served that way, my friend. But what the fuck do I know? So that is the video. A lot of hot takes there from you all. I appreciate all of you for submitting your hot takes. This is really fun to go through, react to some takes I really agree with and a couple I really do not agree with at all. But that's the nature of the beast. That's what's fun about hot takes. You shouldn't agree with all hot takes, otherwise they wouldn't be hot takes. But I'll probably revisit this pretty soon. I'll probably do one of my own, like a part two of my own hot takes, and then maybe get some more of your hot takes. And you can drop them in the comments here below. And if we get a bunch more, I'll happily do a part two. Just reacting to y'all. So this was fun as shit. So hit me in the comments down below if you would like. And if we get, I don't know, we'll say 10 or so of them, we'll do a part two to this. But appreciate you guys, and I shall see you on the other side. Take it easy. See you soon. Goodbye.